My name is Elena Mercer, and I was 32 when my daughter was wheeled into surgery and my parents told me they were too tired to come. They did not say it with cruelty. That would have been easier. Cruelty is sharp. You can see it coming. What they gave me was something colder than that. A flat voice. A tired sigh. The kind of answer people give when they want you to stop asking for anything at all. It is an early morning surgery, my mother said. We do not want to sit in a hospital all day. My father added, we already told you we had plans. Plans? My daughter, Lily, was 7 years old and trying to be brave in the back seat of my car while I drove her home from her pre-op appointment. She had held my hand the whole way. She had asked 3 times if it would hurt. She had asked once if I would stay close. I had told her yes every time. I had not lied to her. I had stayed close. I had filled out the forms. I had arranged the time off work. I had sat with her through the tests, the scans, the long silence in waiting rooms where the air smelled like coffee, bleach, and fear. I had done everything a mother is supposed to do when her child is about to be cut open. What I had not expected was that my own parents would treat it like a minor inconvenience. When I got home, I called them again, thinking maybe they had misunderstood. I stood in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear and watched Lily draw a little sun on a piece of paper at the table. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady, this is not a dentist appointment. She is having surgery. I know what it is, she answered. We are just saying we cannot spend the whole day at the hospital for this. For this. That was the phrase that stayed with me. Not because my daughter's surgery was life-threatening. It was not. But it was still surgery. Still anesthesia. Still a child waking up confused and scared, with a sore body and a dry mouth and no idea where she was. Still the kind of day where a child looks for grandparents in the waiting room because she thinks grandparents mean safety. Lily had asked for them herself. She had stood in the hallway that morning, in her little pink sweatshirt, and said, do Nana and Grandpa know today is the day? I had swallowed hard and said, yes, honey. I had promised her they would be there. That promise sat inside my chest like a stone. My parents had always been the kind of people who made disappointment look practical. They did not raise their voices often. They did not slam doors. They did something worse. They made you feel foolish for needing them. When I was a child, my father forgot my school recital because he had a meeting. My mother missed my high school graduation because she had a headache that turned into 3 days in bed. When I got married, they spent more time talking about the flowers than the vows. When Lily was born, they visited once, took a few photos, and left early because the drive back would be heavy in traffic. I told myself that age made people softer. That maybe they would be different with a grandchild. That maybe they would show up for her in ways they never showed up for me. I was wrong. The evening before surgery, I packed Lily's small overnight bag with careful hands. Her toothbrush. Her stuffed rabbit. A fresh pair of socks. The blue blanket she liked to wrap around her shoulders when she was tired. She watched me fold everything and asked, will Grandma sit with me tomorrow? I paused for 1 second too long. She noticed. Children always notice. Is she busy? Lily asked. Yes, I said. She is busy. Lily nodded, but her face changed in the quiet way children's faces do when they decide not to ask again. That night I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my phone until the screen went dark. I wanted to send one last message. A simple one. Just a reminder. Just one more chance for them to do the right thing. I wrote, deleted, wrote again. Tomorrow matters to Lily. She wants you there. Then I erased it. My mother already knew it mattered. That was the problem. They knew, and they had still decided that their comfort was more important. By 5 the next morning, Lily and I were in the car on our way to the hospital. The sky was still black-blue and empty, and the streets were nearly silent. She leaned her head against the window and held her rabbit against her chest. Every time I glanced at her, my heart tightened. At the hospital entrance, I parked and helped her inside. The lobby lights were too bright. Everything smelled clean and cold. A nurse checked our names. Another nurse gave Lily a sticker with her own name written in black marker. She smiled at it politely, as if even then she knew she was supposed to be brave. I texted my mother one last time from the waiting room. "We are here." She replied 10 minutes later. "We are sorry. Maybe another time. Maybe another time." I read the words twice before I could breathe past them. Lily was sitting beside me, swinging her feet that did not quite reach the floor. She looked up and asked, "Are they coming?" I forced my face to stay calm. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "It looks like it is just us." She stared at me for a second, and then she looked down at her rabbit again. The nurse came out a few minutes later and called our names. It was time. I kissed Lily's forehead and walked beside her bed until they told me I had to stop. She reached for my hand as they rolled her away, and I held on until the very last second. Then she disappeared through the double doors. And I stood there alone in the hallway, with my phone in my hand and a message from my mother still glowing on the screen, and something inside me went still. Not broken. Not yet. Still. Because in that moment, I understood something very clearly. They had not just refused to watch my daughter during surgery. They had chosen not to stand beside me when I needed them most. And I was done pretending that kind of absence was an accident. I sat down in one of the hard blue waiting room chairs and stared at the television hanging from the ceiling without really seeing it. Some morning show host was smiling too much about something involving pancakes or weather or holiday decorations. I could not hear it clearly. I only heard pieces. Little sounds floating around the room. Coffee machine humming. Shoes squeaking across the floor. A child crying somewhere down another hallway. A faucet dripping once. Then silence. I looked at the clock on the wall. 6:48 a.m. The surgery was supposed to last around 2 hours. 2 hours does not sound long until someone you love disappears behind operating room doors. Then it becomes something else entirely. Then every minute stretches. I folded my hands together and tried not to imagine tubes or machines or masks covering Lily's small face. I tried not to think about her asking if I would stay close. Across from me sat an older man wearing a green sweater with a missing button near the collar. He kept looking toward the hallway every few seconds and rubbing his wedding ring with his thumb. Beside him sat a woman holding flowers. Near the coffee machine, a teenage boy slept with his head against his mother's shoulder. Nobody talked much. Hospitals create a strange kind of silence. Complete strangers sit together carrying different fears, but somehow everyone understands everyone else without speaking. At 7:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. For 1 second my heart jumped. I thought maybe my parents had changed their minds. Maybe guilt finally caught up with them. Maybe they were downstairs asking where to park. Instead it was my mother. "How long is this supposed to take?" I stared at the message. That was it. No, how is Lily? No, how are you doing? No, tell her we love her. Just curiosity. Like someone checking on delayed luggage at an airport. I typed 3 different replies before deleting them. Then finally I sent one sentence. "I don't know." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. No response came after that. I slipped the phone back into my purse and leaned my head against the wall behind me. When I was 8 years old, I got pneumonia during winter. I remember that because of the wallpaper in my bedroom. Tiny blue flowers covered the walls. I used to count them when I couldn't sleep. I remember waking up one night struggling to breathe and calling for my mother. She opened the door halfway. "What is it?" she asked. I told her my chest hurt. She stood there for a few seconds and sighed. Then she said, "You always get sick at inconvenient times." I remember those words because even at 8 years old they sounded wrong somehow. Not cruel exactly. Just wrong. I spent years convincing myself she hadn't meant them the way I heard them. I became very good at doing that. Explaining things for people. Maybe Dad forgot because he was stressed. Maybe Mom missed graduation because she wasn't feeling well. Maybe they loved me but just didn't know how to show it. Maybe. 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 I built entire bridges out of maybe. And every single one eventually collapsed. At 7:41 a.m., a nurse walked through the waiting room calling someone's name. The woman with flowers stood up so fast she almost dropped them. I watched relief spread across her face a few minutes later when the nurse smiled. Good news. I looked away. I was ashamed of how jealous I felt. Not because I wanted someone else to suffer. I just wanted someone waiting beside me. Someone saying, "She's going to be okay." Someone bringing bad coffee and sitting quietly beside me. Someone looking worried because Lily mattered to them too. Instead it was just me. Again. At 8:02 a.m., my phone rang. My father. I answered immediately. "Hello?" "Hey," he said. His voice sounded distracted. Television noise played somewhere behind him. "Everything all right?" I blinked. "What?" "With Lily," he said. "Everything okay?" I looked at the clock. I looked around the waiting room. Then I closed my eyes. "She's still in surgery." "Oh." Silence. Then. "Your mother wanted to know because we're heading out soon." Heading out. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear for a second because I thought maybe I heard him wrong. "Heading where?" "The garden center," he said casually. "We wanted to get there early." Garden center. I stared at the floor tiles beneath my feet. White square. Blue square. White square. Blue square. 20 years earlier I had sat in a hospital bed with pneumonia feeling inconvenient. Now my daughter was in surgery while my parents shopped for plants. My father kept talking. There might be traffic later. Traffic. I don't remember standing up. I only remember suddenly realizing I was near the windows at the far end of the waiting room. My hand was shaking. Not violently. Just enough. "Dad," I said quietly. "Yeah?" I looked outside. Morning sunlight had started touching the parking lot. Cars moving slowly. People walking in and out of the entrance. Normal life continuing. Then I said something I had never said to him before. "Don't call again today." Silence. "What?" "Don't call again today." Another silence. Longer this time. Then he laughed a little. Not because something was funny. Because uncomfortable people sometimes laugh. "You're upset." I said nothing. "We'll come by later this week and see her." I stared outside. "No," I said. Then I hung up. For the first time in my life. I hung up first. I stood by the windows for another minute with my phone still in my hand. My reflection stared back at me through the glass. Tired eyes. Hair pulled back too quickly. The same gray sweater I had thrown on before sunrise. For a moment I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different. Because I felt different. Something had shifted. All my life I had treated disappointment like weather. Something unpleasant but unavoidable. Something that rolled in, stayed a while, then passed. I spent years adjusting myself around my parents. Lower expectations. Fewer requests. Smaller hopes. I became easy. Easy daughter. Easy wife. Easy friend. Easy person. Because easy people do not ask for too much. Easy people do not make others uncomfortable. Easy people sit quietly and explain away hurt feelings. But sitting in that hospital waiting room, I suddenly wondered something. What if I had not become easy? What if I had simply become invisible? At 8:17 a.m., a nurse walked toward me. Immediately my stomach dropped. You learn something the first time someone you love goes into surgery. Every nurse walking toward you feels like the nurse. Every movement catches your eye. Every heartbeat becomes louder. Elena Mercer? She asked gently. I stood up so fast the chair beside me scraped the floor. Yes. She's doing well. I felt my shoulders loosen before I even realized they had tightened. The nurse smiled softly. Everything is going exactly as expected. Exactly as expected. 4 words. 4 small words. I sat down again after she walked away, and suddenly tears pressed against my eyes so fast I almost laughed. Not because I was sad. Because I had been holding my breath for nearly 2 hours without realizing it. I covered my face with both hands and sat there quietly while relief moved through me. No dramatic crying. No shaking. Just quiet tears slipping through my fingers. After a minute I wiped my face and looked up. The older man in the green sweater was watching me. Not staring. Just watching. When our eyes met, he nodded once. I nodded back. Nothing else. But somehow I understood what he meant. Good. She's okay. At 8:54 a.m., they finally brought me back to recovery. Lily looked tiny in the hospital bed. Children always do. Machines surrounded her. A blanket covered her up to her shoulders. Her hair looked messy around her face. For one terrible second my heart jumped because her eyes were still closed. Then a nurse smiled. She's just waking up. I moved beside the bed and touched her hand. Warm. Small. Real. I brushed her hair gently away from her forehead. A few moments later her eyes opened slowly. Confused at first. Heavy. Then they found me. Mommy? Her voice sounded rough and sleepy. I leaned closer. I'm right here. She blinked twice. Did you stay? I felt something twist painfully inside my chest. Because she had asked the question so quietly. Like maybe she had expected the answer to be no. I smiled and kissed her forehead. Of course I stayed. Her fingers curled weakly around mine. Then she whispered something so softly I almost missed it. What about Grandma? The room suddenly felt very still. I looked down at her face. 7 years old. Groggy from surgery. Still looking for people who had chosen not to come. I could have lied. I could have said traffic. I could have said they got busy. I could have built another bridge out of maybe. Instead I said something different. No, sweetheart. That was all. Just no. Because children know more than adults think they do. And I was tired of teaching my daughter to excuse disappointment. Lily stared at me for a few seconds. Then she nodded once. She looked toward the ceiling. And after a moment she said, very quietly. That's okay. That's okay. 3 words. 3 tiny words. But they hit me harder than anything else that day. Because I suddenly realized where I had heard them before. From me. My whole life. Dad forgot again? That's okay. Mom couldn't come? That's okay. Maybe next time. Maybe later. Maybe things will change. That's okay. I had spent 32 years saying those words. And now my daughter was saying them too. No. No. I looked down at her hand holding mine. And right there beside that hospital bed, with machines humming quietly around us, I made a decision. Lily was not going to inherit this. Not the excuses. Not the waiting. Not the habit of making herself smaller for people who treated love like an obligation. The cycle was stopping with me. I did not know exactly what that meant yet. But I knew something with complete certainty. My parents had missed something important that morning. Not just surgery. Not just a hospital visit. Something bigger. And they did not even realize it. Not yet. We stayed in the hospital until early afternoon. Lily slept through most of it. Every now and then she opened her eyes and asked for water or squeezed my hand or shifted beneath the blankets before drifting off again. I sat beside her bed and watched sunlight move slowly across the floor tiles. Doctors came in. Nurses checked monitors. Machines beeped softly. Time moved differently inside that room. Slow. Quiet. Heavy. Around 1:16 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Mom. I stared at the screen without touching it. A minute later another message appeared. How is she? Then another. We're thinking of stopping by tonight. No apology. No acknowledgement. No mention of missing the surgery. Just a smooth little step forward as if the morning had never happened. As if they could simply walk around the hurt instead of through it. I looked down at Lily sleeping beside me. A small bandage peeked out beneath the edge of her blanket. Her rabbit sat tucked beneath her arm. I thought about all the times I had opened doors for my parents after disappointment. All the times I had told myself family deserved unlimited chances. Unlimited understanding. Unlimited forgiveness. I had offered grace so many times that eventually I forgot something important. Grace without change becomes permission. I typed a message. Tonight won't work. I stared at it. Then I added something. Lily needed you today. I read the words twice before pressing send. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally. We already said we had plans. I laughed. Not loudly. Not because it was funny. Because suddenly the whole thing felt absurd. For years I thought there would eventually be some perfect combination of words that would make them understand. Some sentence I had not tried yet. Some explanation they had somehow missed. But people understand what matters to them. They always do. My parents understood dinner reservations. Garden centers. Traffic. Birthdays. Television schedules. They understood all of that perfectly. The problem had never been understanding. The problem had been priority. At 2:03 p.m., Lily finally woke up fully. Her eyes looked clearer. Can we go home soon? She asked. Soon. She thought for a moment. Then she said, Mommy? Yeah? Did I do good? I blinked. Do good? She nodded slowly. At surgery. For 1 second I couldn't speak. Because she sounded worried. Like maybe surgery had been some kind of test. Like bravery had rules she might have failed. I leaned over and brushed hair away from her forehead. You did amazing. She looked relieved. Then she smiled a little. Small smile. Sleepy smile. Enough. Later that afternoon they discharged us. I carried Lily's overnight bag in one hand and held her hand with the other as we walked slowly through the parking lot. She moved carefully beside me. Small steps. Tired steps. When we reached the car, she looked up and said, Can we get ice cream later? I smiled. You just had surgery. I know. Very serious face. But surgery is sad. I stared at her for a second. Then I laughed. Real laughter this time. The first real laugh all day. Yes, I said. We can get ice cream later. On the drive home she fell asleep again. Traffic moved steadily around us. Sunlight flashed through trees. And for the first time all day, my mind became quiet. Until I pulled into my driveway. Because sitting directly in front of my house were two familiar cars. My parents' cars. I stopped moving. For a second I just stared. My mother stood near the front porch holding a small pink gift bag. My father leaned against his car with his arms crossed. Waiting. Like nothing had happened. Like they had arrived exactly when they intended to all along. I looked back at Lily sleeping in her seat. Then I looked at the house again. My father smiled and lifted a hand. My chest went cold. Because suddenly I understood something. They had not come because Lily needed them. They had come because now they could feel me pulling away. And people who take you for granted often notice distance long before they notice pain. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment with both hands still resting on the steering wheel. Outside, my mother adjusted the straps on the little pink gift bag and smiled toward the car again. My father looked at his watch. Waiting. Not worried. Not guilty. Waiting. I looked in the back seat. Lily was still asleep with her head leaning slightly to one side. Her rabbit rested against her chest, and her mouth was open just a little the way it always was when she was deeply asleep. I watched her breathe. In. Out. In. Out. Then I looked back at the house. For years I had rehearsed versions of this moment in my head. Moments where I finally explained everything. Moments where I finally said the perfect thing. Moments where my parents suddenly understood. I imagined tears. Apologies. Regret. People changing. But sitting there in the driveway, I realized something strange. I did not want any of that anymore. I was tired. Not angry. Just tired. There is a point where disappointment stops feeling sharp. It becomes heavy instead. Heavy enough that carrying it starts hurting more than putting it down. I opened my door quietly and stepped outside. My mother immediately walked toward me. "Oh good," she said. "How is she?" I stared at her. Just stared. Because for a second my brain got stuck on something small. Her hair. She had gotten it done. Fresh color. Fresh curls. She had not had time for the hospital. But she had time for that. Beside her, my father smiled. "We brought her something." He lifted the pink bag slightly. I looked at it. Tissue paper. Cartoon hearts. Probably candy or toys. Things bought at the last minute. Things meant to smooth over discomfort. My mother lowered her voice. "Is she okay?" I kept my eyes on her face. "She asked for you." Silence. Just for a second. Then my mother shifted her purse on her shoulder. "Well," she said carefully, "we already told you about our plans." Plans. Again. I nodded slowly. Not because I agreed. Because suddenly I understood there was nothing left to understand. No hidden meaning. No secret explanation. No misunderstanding. Just choices. Simple choices. My father cleared his throat. "So where is she?" I looked toward the back seat. "Sleeping." "Oh." He glanced at the car. "Well, wake her up. We came all the way over here." I actually thought I heard him wrong. Wake her up. After surgery. After anesthesia. Wake her up. I looked at him for several seconds. Then I said quietly, "No." He frowned. "What do you mean no?" "I mean she's sleeping." My mother crossed her arms lightly. "We drove 30 minutes. I looked at both of them. Then I looked at the house. Then back at them. 30 minutes. That was interesting. Because the hospital was 23 minutes from their house. I knew that because I had driven there hundreds of times over the years. 23 minutes. Too far for surgery. 30 minutes. Close enough for damage control. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Clarity. My father sighed. Elena, don't make this into something bigger than it is. I stared at him. Something bigger than it is. I thought about Lily holding my hand before surgery. I thought about her asking if Grandma would sit with her. I thought about her tiny voice asking if she had done good. Then I thought about the waiting room. The coffee machine. The silence. The garden center. I looked back at my father. This already is something bigger than you think it is. He frowned. My mother looked uncomfortable now. Not sad. Uncomfortable. Different things. She glanced toward the car again. Can we just see her for a minute? I shook my head. No. Silence. My father blinked. What? No. This time I said it calmly. No shaking voice. No tears. No apology attached to it. Just no. For a moment nobody spoke. Then my mother gave a small nervous laugh. Elena, stop being dramatic. Dramatic. I almost smiled. Because people often call you dramatic the first time you stop quietly accepting something. I looked directly at her. Then I said. You refused to sit beside your granddaughter during surgery. I paused. You don't get to show up for the easy part and pretend you were here for the hard part. Neither of them said anything. Not immediately. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fill the silence. The silence stretched longer than I expected. My father looked down at the driveway for a moment. My mother adjusted the strap on her purse again. She always did that when she was uncomfortable. I noticed little things like that growing up. The small signals. The signs that told me when I should stop talking. When I should apologize. When I should smooth things over. I spent years reading other people's discomfort and treating it like an emergency. But standing there in my driveway, I realized something else. No one had ever taught me to pay attention to my own. My father finally cleared his throat. You know, he said slowly, we did the best we could. I looked at him. Because that sentence felt familiar. Very familiar. I had heard versions of it my whole life. When my school recital was forgotten. When birthdays were missed. When promises disappeared. We did the best we could. The sentence always arrived at the end of the conversation. Like a locked door. Like once those words were spoken, nothing else mattered anymore. No one was allowed to still be hurt. No one was allowed to ask for more. I used to accept it. I used to nod. I used to tell myself maybe I expected too much. But suddenly I thought of Lily. 7 years old. Small hand in mine. Asking if she had done good. And I asked myself something. If Lily came to me one day and said I hurt her, would I tell her I did my best? Or would I ask her what happened? The answer came immediately. I would ask. Of course I would ask. Because people who love you should want to know where the pain lives. My mother looked toward me carefully. We didn't think it was this serious. I stared at her. Then I looked toward my car. Lily was still asleep. Sunlight touched the side window beside her face. I remembered her sitting at the kitchen table drawing a little sun on paper before surgery. I remembered her asking if Nana and Grandpa knew today was the day. Then I looked back at my mother. She was scared. My voice stayed quiet. She wanted you there. My mother's expression shifted slightly. Just slightly. Not guilt exactly. More like surprise. As if she had not considered that Lily might actually remember any of this. As if children were temporary things. As if disappointment evaporated when people got older. My father crossed his arms tighter. Kids forget things. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Then I thought about being 8 years old with pneumonia. Blue flowers on the wallpaper. My mother's voice from the doorway. You always get sick at inconvenient times. I remembered every word. Every single word. I looked back at him. No, I said softly. Children remember strange things. Silence again. A bird landed somewhere near the mailbox. A car drove slowly past the house. The world kept moving. My mother finally sighed. So what happens now? There it was. Not, how do we fix this? Not, what can we do? What happens now? Like we were discussing weather. Or schedules. Or delayed flights. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. Then I said something I had not planned to say. I think I spent my whole life chasing people who should have been walking toward me. Neither of them spoke. I continued quietly. I kept believing if I explained enough, tried enough, forgave enough, eventually I'd become important enough. I looked down for a second. Then back up. But I already was. My father's expression changed slightly. My mother looked away. And suddenly I understood something that hurt. Not because it was new. Because it had been true for a very long time. My parents were not bad people. Bad people would have been easier. Bad people are simple. My parents loved me in the way they knew how. The problem was that the way they knew how had always asked me to accept less. Less attention. Less care. Less effort. Less. And I was done handing that lesson to my daughter. I looked toward the house. Then back at them. Lily needs rest. My voice stayed calm. You should go home. This time neither of them argued. My mother stood there for another few seconds with the pink gift bag still hanging from her hand. Then she looked down at it. For the first time since I had pulled into the driveway, she seemed uncertain about what to do. Because gifts are easy. Showing up afterward is easy. Buying toys and candy is easy. Sitting in a hospital waiting room while a child you love disappears behind operating room doors is harder. Hard things ask something from people. Easy things let people feel good about themselves. My father shifted his weight. You're overreacting, he said quietly. Not angry. Not loud. Just certain. I looked at him and realized something strange. His words did not land anymore. For years they would have. Years ago I would have started questioning myself immediately. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am being unfair. Maybe I expected too much. But standing there beside my sleeping daughter, I felt none of that. Because once you stop doubting your own reality, certain sentences lose their power. I opened the back door of the car carefully. Lily stirred a little but did not wake up. I unbuckled her slowly and lifted her into my arms. She felt warm and heavy against my chest. Still half asleep. Still safe. When I turned around, my parents were watching me. I remembered carrying Lily for the first time after she was born. She had weighed 7 pounds and 4 ounces. I remembered staring at her tiny face and feeling something settle inside me. Not fear. Not panic. Responsibility. Complete responsibility. I remember thinking, I will protect you. Back then I thought protection mostly meant big things. Seatbelts. Medicine. Locks on doors. Holding hands in parking lots. I did not understand yet that protection also meant smaller things. Teaching someone they deserve care. Teaching someone they do not have to beg for love. Teaching someone not to shrink themselves just to make other people comfortable. I started walking toward the house. Behind me my mother finally spoke. Elena. I stopped. Not because of the way she said my name. Because of what I heard underneath it. Fear. Small fear. I turned around. She looked suddenly older standing there. Not physically. Just smaller somehow. Are you really this upset? She asked. Really this upset? I stared at her. Then I almost laughed again. Because suddenly I understood something that should have been obvious years earlier. People who repeatedly disappoint you often become shocked by consequences. Not by pain. Pain they are used to. Consequences are different. Consequences mean something changed. I looked at her for several seconds. Then I said quietly. This isn't about today. Neither of them moved. I adjusted Lily gently against my shoulder. This is about every time I needed you and convinced myself not to. Silence. This is about every time I told myself maybe next time. My father looked away. My mother's eyes stayed on me. I kept speaking. When Lily asked where you were today. My voice caught for 1 second. Only one. I heard myself. No one said anything. I looked down at Lily sleeping against me. Then back up. I don't want her learning that disappointment is normal. My mother blinked quickly. My father lowered his eyes. And for the first time all day, neither one of them had an answer. I turned and walked toward the front door. No shouting. No dramatic ending. Just footsteps across the driveway. Step. 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 I unlocked the door and carried Lily inside. Behind me I heard a car door close. Then another. A few seconds later engines started. I did not turn around. I stood inside the hallway holding my daughter while sunlight stretched across the floorboards. Then I listened as 2 cars slowly pulled away. And disappeared. I thought I would feel victorious. I thought I would feel relieved. Instead I just felt tired. Very tired. Because letting go of people you love does not feel like winning. Even when it is necessary. Especially when it is necessary. The next few days passed quietly. Lily stayed home from school while she recovered. She spent most of her time curled up on the couch beneath her blue blanket watching cartoons and eating toast cut into small squares because she said regular toast somehow tasted different after surgery. Children say things like that. And somehow they make complete sense. By the 3rd day she was walking around more. By the 4th day she was laughing again. By the 5th day she was asking if she could go outside. Life slowly started moving back toward normal. But something inside me had not moved back. Something had changed. I noticed it in small moments. My phone rang twice from my parents that week. I did not answer. My mother left a voicemail. Then another. Then a text message. We think you're being unfair. Later. You're keeping Lily from us. Then. Call us. No apology. No, we were wrong. No, we should have been there. Just pressure. Just expectation. I read every message once. Then put my phone down. Years ago those messages would have followed me around all day. I would have replayed them while washing dishes. While driving. While trying to sleep. I would have felt guilty. But guilt feels different when you finally understand where it comes from. Sometimes guilt does not mean you are hurting someone. Sometimes it simply means you stopped behaving the way they expected. One afternoon Lily sat beside me on the couch coloring quietly. The house smelled like tomato soup because I had left a pot warming in the kitchen. Sunlight spilled across the carpet. Outside, wind moved gently through the trees. Lily looked up suddenly. Mommy? Yeah? She kept coloring. Are Grandma and Grandpa mad? Children notice everything. Even things we think we hide. I looked at her little face. 7 years old. Still healing. Still trusting me to tell her the truth. I set down my coffee. No, sweetheart. She looked at me. Then what happened? I thought for a moment. Because some truths need simple words. And some truths need honest ones. Then I said, sometimes people love us, but they don't always take care of us the way they should. She listened carefully. I brushed hair away from her face. And sometimes when that happens, we make space. She blinked. What does that mean? I smiled a little. It means we stand where people treat us gently. She thought about that. Really thought about it. Then she nodded once and went back to coloring. That was it. No dramatic speech. No tears. Just understanding. Children are strange that way. Adults complicate pain. Children walk straight through it. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to sleep, I stood in her doorway watching her. Her rabbit sat tucked beneath her arm. One leg hung out from under the blanket. Moonlight touched the side of her face. I stood there quietly and thought about something. My whole life I had believed love meant staying. Staying patient. Staying understanding. Staying available. Even when people gave very little back. But standing there in that doorway, I finally understood something I wish I had learned years earlier. Love is not measured by how much disappointment you can survive. Love is measured by how safely someone can place their heart in your hands. And children learn what love looks like by watching us accept it. I walked over and kissed Lily softly on the forehead. She shifted slightly in her sleep. Then settled again. I stood there for one last moment. Because sometimes peace does not arrive loudly. Sometimes it does not look like revenge. Sometimes nobody cries. Nobody apologizes. Nobody chases after you. Sometimes peace arrives quietly. Like a sleeping child. Like an empty driveway. Like realizing that protecting someone else finally taught you how to protect yourself too. This is Quiet Desk Stories. If this story touched something in your heart, share your thoughts below, and remember this. You should never have to earn the care that love was supposed to give freely.